Let's get to that. Who here has heard someone's story before? And when you heard someone's story, you learned something from it. Anyone learned from someone's story before? Anyone learned people's story before? But it's what we call learning vicariously. Learning vicariously means that you don't actually have to experience it, but you can learn from other people's story. Like someone might say, I walked down that path and I fell into the hole that's there. Well, you have just learned that there is a hole down that way without you having to experience that hole. And so we can learn vicariously from people. And so that's one way that we can learn. Another way that we can learn is by asking questions. There are people in this room who help me out because they're the sort of people that love asking questions. Who are my people that love asking questions? Let me see, show of hands. Make us a few of you. Great. Awesome. So you guys that like asking questions, you make it my job easier. You make my job easier because you're probably going to ask some questions that probably someone else in the room has. There are some people who are a bit shy and timid and don't feel comfortable putting their hand up to ask a question. That's okay. But it doesn't mean that they don't have questions. They just don't feel comfortable enough to ask those questions. So if you're the sort of person that likes asking questions, I have created this course around you. You have your own section. And you'll know where that section is because I'll say, does anyone have any questions? That's your section. Go for your life, put your hand up at that point, and I'll throw to you and we'll find out what your question is. We'll answer your question as a group. Now, sometimes somebody will ask a question that only serves themselves. And what I mean by that is they might only ask a question about a situation that's very specific to them, but not really applicable to anyone else. It might be, yeah, Shane, I've got a question. I've got a one-eyed, three-legged dog at home. Can I hypnotise him? Probably not going to be relevant to other people. And so rather than taking up everyone else's time by answering that in the group setting, I might say, look, great question. I'll take that offline, come and see me in the break, and I'll answer it for you. And therefore, it doesn't take up anyone else's time, and I don't lose the rest of you while we have that discussion about how to hypnotise a one-eyed, three-legged dog. And so, just know if you do ask a question, and I think it's probably not going to help everyone else, I might say, look, great question, come and see me in the break, I'll answer it for you. And that way, we don't lose momentum for everyone else. Now, occasionally, someone will ask a question at a time that probably isn't the right time. Like, I might have someone on stage doing hypnosis, and someone might have a question. If that happens, I might just gesture to you. I might go, oh, look, just, I'll come back to you. Or I might just make a gesture for you to bring your hand back down. I know you've got a question, so when I get to the question section, guess I'm going to throw you first. It'll be you, if you've got that question. So I'll be able to remember who it is, and I'll throw to you and we'll make sure your question's going to be answered. What I also want you to do is, there might be times when you have a question, but you think it's not the right time to ask it. I'll need to remember that. Rather than you having to remember it, I want to give you a mechanism so you can record all your questions. I want you to go to the very back page of your manual. It's the very back page. So you've got a blank page on the right and a blank page on the left. At the top of that page, I want you to write questions page. Just write questions page at the top of that page for me. The questions page is the page I want you to turn to anytime that you've got a question but you don't think it's the right time to ask it. And so that way, when we do get to the question section of the course, and I say, does anyone have any questions, you can flip to your question page and you can start to make sure your questions are going to be answered. Sometimes people don't take my advice and they come up to me in the break and like, Shane, I've got a question for you. I go, okay, what is it? And they're like, oh shit, I can't remember. Oh, it's going to annoy me. And they forget it. And it's probably a really good question. It's probably could have opened up something for them. And so I'm going to encourage you to go to your question page and write them down. And that way, as well, if we run out of time, you can come up and see me afterwards. You can say, look, Shane, I've got 3 questions that you haven't answered yet. Can we have them answered? I can absolutely do that. This weekend, my main mission is to show you how to get a result. This is what I mean by that. Who here knows that you can go home tonight to your home and you can turn on the light switch and you can get the lights to turn on? Who knows they can absolutely get the lights to turn on when they get home? Fantastic. So you know you can get that result. If the outcome was, I want you to go home and turn the lights on, you know you can do that. Who here knows the scientific reason as to why you flip that switch, it starts to heat up the element by sending the electricity current to the element and it heats up and who here knows the science as to why that all works? So we've probably got about 6, 7 people. You don't need to know the science in order to get a result. I've met some people who are absolute hypnosis nerds. Like, they can answer every single question that you throw at them about hypnosis. But when they work with someone, they kind of struggle. And then I've met some people who are absolutely gifted when it comes to working one-on-one with a client and getting that client a result. They can get any client a result. But you ask that person, in what year did James Braid write his first book on hypnosis? They're like, what do I care? Oh, I've got no idea. And then you say, oh, what language was it based on? The word hypnosis, well, I don't know. They can't answer the questions because to them, that's not crucial information in order to get a client a result. You ask them, how do I help a client overcome smoking, or how do I help them reduce pain? They can answer those questions. But the theory side of it, they don't really care too much about. Who would you prefer to work with? Someone that can get results, or someone that can just answer questions? Results, right? That's what I'm going to focus most of my time and effort on this weekend. Yes, I will still give you part of the science. I'll give you some of it. I'll give you some of the history. But we're not going to spend all that much time on it, because that stuff you can get from where do you think? Books or Google. I was thinking books, really old school. Yes, or Google. You can get the intellectual stuff somewhere else. You can go and read it, you can get a whole library of books, or Google. What you can't do by reading books, what you can't do through Google, is getting the practical understanding. And that's where courses come into it. And that's where the exercises are going to come into it. That's where you will actually go through hypnotizing somebody else, a full session. Who here's read a book before and you thought, oh, that's really good information, and then you're like, oh, I'll do that, but you never did. Exactly. So reading books is just one dimension of learning. Do the practical understanding this weekend, and you can always do the reading later on. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them in your questions page, or when we get to the question section, throw your hand up in the air and I'll answer those questions. If the question is something that is a little bit more scientific, sometimes people ask a question, I think it may confuse some of the other people in the room. If that happens, I'll say, great question, we'll take it offline, come and see me in the break, and we can chat about it. I can have deep, lengthy chats about the science and the research on hypnosis, but for a lot of people, some of you probably aren't interested in that. You're probably just interested in how do I use hypnosis in my own life, and how do I use it with other people. And all that other stuff you can get from reading books and Google. So, the next S is by sharing stories and by asking questions, which is to share. Share your questions, share your stories. Not shares, share. Share. And when I say share your stories, what I mean by that is even after the exercise, after each exercise, we'll do a debrief. I'll throw it out to you guys and say, what do I need to know? Like, what did you experience through that exercise? What did you learn from that exercise? What mistakes did you make through that exercise? Because then if we can start to socialise some of those ideas and some of those experiences, you're going to have unique experiences. It's not all going to be the same. And so the more engagement I can get from you, the more other people are going to learn, the more that you're going to learn as well. Because when you sit in a room like you are right now, listening to me talk, you get a one-dimensional learning experience. Because by listening to me talk, creates thoughts for you. You're listening to me talk, and you're thinking in your own head, oh, how does that apply to me? And do I agree with that? And how's that going to work here? And you've got all these thoughts tossing around. It's a one-dimensional learning experience. And then you get a two-dimensional learning experience by starting to take notes. And you write it down. You write things down. So you are representing information. Anytime you're thinking about things, you're hearing something, you're thinking about it, you then write it down. You've got a visual representation and also a kinesthetic of it, like you're feeling what it's like to write it down. And so you are representing your thoughts again down on paper, in your words, or maybe using my words, whatever it might be, but you then have a two-dimensional learning experience. The way to retain information at a deeper level is to represent it multiple times. If you can go over who here has learned something before, maybe a computer program. Maybe you learned a computer program a long time ago, and then you revisit it after a long time. You thought, I can't remember how to use it again. Anyone had those moments? Yeah, those old skills that we haven't done for a while, you get to them and you're like, how do I do it again? Maybe it's even riding a bike. You're like, hang on, how do I do it? And so we want to represent that information many times so we can really retain it. One way of doing that is to write things down, but then also to speak about it. Is to speak about, what did you learn? What did it mean to you? What experiences did you go through? And what you're then doing is you're representing that information a third time, therefore you get a three-dimensional learning experience. And so that's why it does fall to sharing your stories, your experiences, and your questions. And by doing so, you're going to help yourself and you're going to help others as well. So let me see you show of hands. Who here is committed to sharing your experiences, your stories, and your questions? Raise your hand. You see, fantastic, great, awesome. Now, even if you're not the sort of person that doesn't like asking questions, you're more than welcome to ask questions as well. So by sharing your stories, your experiences, and your questions, by taking notes, using symbols and colours, taking plenty of notes as though you're going to train this to somebody else, focusing on your stance, making sure your stance is correct, and allowing you to take in more information. Being in a childlike state, you're going to take in anywhere from 60 to 70% of the information being delivered. Would you like to learn more than 70% of this weekend? Yes or no? Yes. Fantastic. Is this all making sense so far? Yes or no? Yes. Now, when I said that these are advanced learning principles, hopefully you can see they're not overly complicated. The reason why they're considered advanced learning principles is because very few people do them all together. Might do one or two, but they rarely have a conscious understanding of, okay, I want to do all of this at once. If I can do all this at once, I'm going to find I will learn things a lot faster and with less effort.